I'm Vinnie Politan, the subject of my investigation, the double murder of a young, loving couple raising two children who were brutally executed. And prosecutors say it was the ex-husband. Here's the story. On a cold December morning in Columbus, Ohio, friends and co-workers grew alarmed when dentist Spencer Tepe didn't show up for work. A welfare check just before 10 a.m. on December 30th uncovered a scene of unspeakable horror. Spencer, 37, and his wife Monique, 39, were found shot to death inside their North 4th Street home, victims of a double homicide. Their two young children were inside the house, unharmed, but forever changed. For weeks, the case puzzled police. No sign of forced entry, no weapon recovered, no apparent motive. But investigators traced surveillance video and vehicle data to a suspect, Monique's ex-husband, 39-year-old vascular surgeon Michael David McKee. McKee was arrested on January 10th at a Chick-fil-A in Rockford, Illinois, and extradited to Ohio. Charged with 4 counts of aggravated murder and aggravated burglary, he has pleaded not guilty. Authorities allege McKee traveled hundreds of miles and may have stalked the couple in the weeks before the killings, a grim connection in a case that has devastated 2 families. That home, the scene of this brutal double murder where those 2 children were just across the hallway in 2 other rooms, were sleeping when their parents were murdered, leaving them as orphans. Same home where this couple got married. And now we're learning the suspect is the ex-husband of Monique Tepe. Let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Now, Cody, we are now seeing video of the suspect. Tell me, what does this video show us?
Yeah, Vinny, we got new video of Michael McKee getting booked into the Franklin County Jail in Ohio on January 20th. Now, in this video, you'll see him getting searched. He's walking in hallways. They remove his clothes. They ask him to open his mouth at one point. But throughout all this, Vinny, you'll get to see his demeanor after getting booked, as he's getting booked into this jail. Take a look. Vinnie, you know, given the circumstances, he seems very calm in that situation there. Now, we know that he arrived at the Franklin County Jail 10 days after he was initially booked into custody in Illinois. And as you could probably see during that video, we can't really tell what he's saying to deputies if he's saying anything at all.
Yeah, but you're right. He seems like he knows the routine. He's very comfortable, like oddly comfortable. This was a vascular surgeon now being searched and held in jail, which brings us to the first question in our investigation tonight. Did Michael McKee expect to be arrested? Joining me, psychotherapist, CEO of Life Counseling Solutions, Dr. Janie Lacey, and former homicide detective, more than 20 years working homicides and high-profile cases. Phil Waters is with us. Phil, I want to start with you because you've dealt with a lot of these characters who've been arrested. What are your thoughts? You can tell me in general about people you've arrested, whether or not like they were expecting it, and then any opinions you have about this particular defendant based upon all the circumstances and what we just saw there 10 days after the arrest.
Well, it's good to be back with you, Vinny. I tell you, I don't find his demeanor in this setting terribly surprising. I think anyone that I have spoken with, that I've interviewed, that I've had in that room, talking to them, I think everyone that commits an act like this has an expectation that they are going to get caught, even if they think they've committed the perfect crime. So I don't find his demeanor terribly surprising, because at this point in time, he's resigned to the fact that he is where he is, and I don't think it's any surprise to him. So he's cooperating. It looks like he has a little, I don't know if he's got an itch or something there, his nose is running or something, but he says something to one of the jailers and about why he's moving around. So I don't find the behavior in this setting terribly surprising.
Let me ask you, Dr. Janie Lacey, you know, it's always difficult when we get into the area of trying to get into the mind of someone accused of an extremely horrific crime like this. But we live in a day and age with, you know, extremely incredible DNA, ballistics, and video evidence, and license plate readers, and everything else from coast to coast. Do you think that this doctor expected to get arrested?
You know, Vinny, based on everything we're seeing in this case, I believe that Michael absolutely did not expect to be arrested. And I say this because this speaks to a particular profile that we see in individuals who commit these high calculated crimes. So here's what tells me this, right? He left his phone at the hospital for 17 hours, Vinny, from December 29th through noon of December 30th, I believe. And that is not impulsive behavior. That's a surgeon's precision applied to something horrific. He believed he outsmarted everyone. And the reason why I say that, when we look at some of the facts that are released, he returned to work. He went back to his job as a surgeon as if nothing happened. And that's not behavior of someone who thinks they're about to get caught. That's someone who believes they're executed a flawless plan. And then I believe it was Jay Fulton who had said that he thought he was the smartest person in the room in whatever room he walks into. That is grandiosity, Vinny, at its finest. It's exactly what we see in narcissistic perpetrators who believe they're above consequences. And the last comment I'll make with the video you just showed, with that calm demeanor, when he appeared also in the courtroom, I believe, he was also just zero emotion. He appeared almost bored. And that's someone to me who believed that he's in control.
Phil, have you had the opportunity in all your experience to interrogate or interview or interact with a suspect of this level of profession and intellect? And, you know, the guy's a vascular surgeon. You don't just kind of like stumble into that. It takes a certain level of whatever drive, intelligence, whatever it is. And how do you think that's going to play into all of this?
Well, the answer to your question is yes. I have spoken to these people that think they're the smartest people in the room, and of course they've done what they thought they needed to do to not be held accountable for what they have done. So again, with all due respect to Dr. Lacey, I see his demeanor as a typical sociopath. That's a guy that in his mind, he's justified in what he did. And I don't look at that as being a sign of arrogance. I mean, you talk to some of these folks that have been arrested years after they've committed a murder, 30, 40 years, and almost to every one of them, they say, I knew this day was coming. So in his intellectual mind, he may have convinced himself that, I may have gotten away with this, but I think in his real head, in his sociopathic head, he knows that this day is coming. He's going to be held accountable for this.
What's that change in life going to be like for him, Dr. Lacey, going from the vascular surgeon, the surgeon when you're in the room, you're in charge. He's no longer in charge wherever he is. He's like the low man on the totem pole now.
Well, we'll definitely see that play out. But what we'll see with people with his profile is they learn to compartmentalize. So he has to probably live in a certain world in his mind in order to day by day move through, right? When they have this pathological entitlement. And when we see that, they try to, wherever they go, be the biggest person in the room. So I would imagine he will continue to have that type of profile and that compartmentalization where in his mind he may see himself one way, but like my co-panelist said, in reality, it will be very different, Vinny.
Yeah. And Phil, how do you think he's going to get along with other inmates?
I was just thinking about that while Dr. Lacey was talking. I think he's going to get a real dose of reality in prison. It'll be interesting to see how he negotiates prison life. He's going to be quickly indoctrinated into where he fits in on whatever rung of that ladder that he is on. So it's going to be interesting. There's going to be some people that are going to bring him down to, look, you're not in charge of anything now. In fact, we are in charge of everything you do in this prison. And I'm not talking about the guards.
No,
I'm talking about his potential roommate and the people that he's in the dorm with.
Yeah.
So there you go. It'll be interesting to see that transition.
His new peers. Okay. Dr. Jane Lacey, Phil Waters staying with us. Coming up next, how long had Michael McKee allegedly been wanting to do this?
Can you answer for the record? Michael McKee, have you had a chance to speak with him?
Yes, Your Honor.
What are you reporting?
Fire. The tragic murder of Keith Canero and his entire family.
The defendant repeatedly shot and killed his brother and then moved to murder the rest of the family inside the home.
Their sprawling mansion set on fire.
Paul and Keith were not only brothers, but business partners.
This one is the most brutal case that I've seen in my experience here.
The Mansion Murders Trial. Live coverage weekday mornings, 8/7 Central on Court TV.
We can say that we have the suspect's vehicle on neighborhood video surveillance arriving just before the murders and leaving shortly after. Detectives were able to link this vehicle to McKee. The vehicle was located in Rockford, Illinois, and evidence was found that showed McKee in possession of the vehicle before and after the homicides.
And I remembered when all of this first happened and we were learning about Spencer. There was a lot of focus on Spencer, the dentist, but then there was some focus on Monique, right? And we learned that Monique had been previously married. So people were like, well, what about that? And it was like 10 years ago, and it was a very short marriage. And then when it was her ex-husband who got arrested, everybody's like, wow, why? What's going on here? Let's bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Cody, what do we know about what was going on in Michael McKee, the ex-husband, in his life since the divorce with Monique?
Yeah, Vinny, well, we know they divorced way back in 2017, and since then he became a vascular surgeon, living most recently in Chicago, Illinois, practicing at a medical center nearby in Rockford, Illinois. But Vinny, we dug up something pretty interesting today. The U.S. Sun found his dating profile on the website Bumble, which is a popular dating app. His profile has pictures. We see pictures of him there. These are the pictures that are on his Bumble profile. And it also has an About Me section that says, in his own words, quote, "Lucky to have work I find meaningful and increased free time for new things. Currently trying hot yoga. Way less flexible than I recall. Planning trip itineraries to finally make use of global entry, and hopped on an electric motorcycle. Haven't died yet." So, Vinny, seems like a relatively normal profile on Bumble, which, by the way, for our viewers that don't know, is a dating app where women have to message first to get a conversation started. That's literally how it's programmed. Now, Vinny, another interesting thing, according to a People magazine interview with a friend of Monique, it says McKee would ask around about Monique whenever he saw a mutual acquaintance, which, of course, that's interesting given how short their marriage was, but she was clearly still on his mind. Now, Vinny, back to his medical career. According to the Columbus Dispatch, he had a license in Nevada, which lapsed in mid-2025. A Clark County, Nevada court records show McKee is one of several doctors who were named in an ongoing personal injury lawsuit. McKee's medical license shows no disciplinary history in any of the states where he's practiced, and McKee has no discernible criminal record outside of traffic tickets. And at one time, McKee had a hunting license in Ohio, but it's unclear if that license, Vinny, remains active or valid. So that's what he's been up to since 2017.
That whole Bumble thing, very interesting. Let me ask you, was Monique at all concerned about her ex, Michael?
Well, yeah, Vinny, the short answer is yes. And this is what a detective wrote in support of probable cause. It says, quote, "Monique had told friends and family her ex-husband, Dr. Michael D. McKee, had been abusive and had made numerous threats on her life during and after their marriage. An identifiable witness told detectives that Monique Tepe had shared an allegation against Michael McKee of forced unwanted sex and of strangulation. Another identifiable witness told detectives that Michael D. McKee had told Monique that he could kill her at any time and would find her and buy the house right next to her, that she will always be his wife." And Vinny, you know, reading that, could you imagine how scary that must have been for Monique, for this woman to somewhat know that this man is continuing to lurk in her life with violent intentions? I mean, that's just terrifying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, after all these years, brings us to the next question in our investigation. How long had Michael McKee allegedly been wanting to do this? Was this something that was simmering year after year after year, or was there a recent triggering event? Still with me, psychotherapist Dr. Jenny Lacey and former detective Phil Waters. Dr. Jenny Lacey, I'll start with you on this one. What are your thoughts about, you know, what we know right now and what was going on in his life? And obviously, you know, he's got a profession. He's got like a whole world there. He's got a profile with a very nice filtered photograph that he put on there of himself, whitening up his teeth, etc. Do you think this is something that was simmering for all these years?
You know, Vinny, what I would say is the evidence suggests this wasn't something that happened overnight. And, you know, what Cody just shared, like what we're seeing here is what we call in domestic violence work an ownership mentality, right? McKee, he viewed Monique as his property. And the marriage ending wasn't an endpoint for him. It was a wound, you know, what I would say to his ego that never healed. So that statement, she will always be his wife, I mean, that tells us everything. In his mind, she didn't have the right to leave. She didn't have the right to move on. She didn't have the right to be happy with someone else. And Spencer, I mean, he became the living symbol of Monique's freedom, her new life, her new family, her children, and that weren't McKee's children. That would have been unbearable for someone with this type of psychology. And you think about that fact that he showed up to their home 3 weeks before the murder. I mean, that while they were at I believe, a championship game. I mean, that's critical to me. And she knew on some level that he was escalating. I believe that she felt his presence at where she had to leave, and there was some terror. When people stalk like this, you never really are free, Vinnie.
Yeah, I can't. Phil, the marriage was so short. She had moved on. She'd been married for 5 years, a 4-year-old, a 1-year-old. Like, her life has completely changed, yet this man, all these years later, now accused of taking her life. What are your thoughts about, is this something that, like, why then? Why so many years later? I think you're muted there, Phil. Can you check your audio? I didn't know if it was my end or your end. Do we have him? Dr. Janie Lacey, while we're fixing up Phil's audio, for Monique to know that this man is out there and know that she is so in love and has found an incredible guy and has 2 incredible children, how do you think that was impacting her day-to-day life? You know, just knowing that this guy was somewhere out there.
You know, when we think about that, she knew on some level, right? I would probably suggest that he probably was planning this, Vinnie, ever since she divorced. And I can only imagine what her experience was divorcing someone like this. And the threats that he made from what was reported, I can kill you at any time, Vinnie. I mean, those weren't impulsive outbursts. So those were declarations of intent. And tragically, he finally acted on them. So what we tell survivors is believe the threats, Vinnie. Document everything, because when someone tells you who they are and what they're capable of, you have to believe them. So this is probably, you know, some indication of what it was like for those short time that she was married to someone like this, especially from what we know the reports to be, probably was a very scary, anxiety-filled relationship for her, which probably made her leave that relationship, Vinnie.
Dr. Janie Lacey, thank you so much. And a big thanks to Phil Waters. I know we have some technical difficulties there at the end, but we appreciate it. Still to come, what do the autopsy results reveal? I'm Vinnie Politan. We continue our investigation of the murders of Monique and Spencer Tepe, brutally executed in the same home where they were married and raising their children. Here's the story. The Wineland Park neighborhood woke on December 30th to a nightmare. Inside the elegant home of Spencer and Monique Tepe, both were found dead from multiple gunshot wounds after a worried friend called police. Spencer hadn't shown up for work and no one could reach Monique. Their 2 children, ages 4 and 1, were discovered safe but surrounded by tragedy. Detectives pieced together surveillance footage from the early morning hours, tracing a vehicle linked to a suspect identified as Monique's ex-husband, Dr. Michael McKee, a 39-year-old vascular surgeon from Illinois. McKee was arrested on January 10th at a restaurant near his workplace in Rockford and later extradited to Ohio. Court documents allege McKee had previously been seen near the couple's home and harbored resentment toward his ex-wife. He now faces 4 counts of aggravated murder and 1 of aggravated burglary. McKee has pleaded not guilty, and the case is headed toward a bitter legal battle as the community seeks justice for 2 lives ended far too soon. So what exactly happened to Spencer and Monique? How were they killed? How were they murdered? Let's bring in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Cody, what do we know about the autopsy results?
Well, Vinnie, we already knew that they were shot to death, but this autopsy report reveals to us that they were shot a whole bunch of times. And we'll begin here with Spencer Tepe. Cause of death, of course, gunshot wounds to the head, neck, trunk, and upper extremities. Manner of death, of course, homicide. Time of death, 10:11 a.m., December 30th, 2025. And Vinnie, this 10:11, this is likely the time that first responders recorded because police previously said that they believe the deaths occurred between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. So this is probably the time when, medical staff got to the home. But Vinnie, he was shot 7 times. Once in the head, once in the neck, 3 in the trunk or torso area, 2 in the upper extremities. And now we move on to his wife, Monique Tepe. Vinnie, cause of death, gunshot wounds to the head, trunk, and upper extremities. Manner of death, homicide. Time of death, 10:11 a.m., same date, December 30th. Monique was shot 9 times, Vinnie, shot more than Spencer. Once in the zygomatic region, which that is the cheekbone area of the face. He was shot directly in the face once. 3 in the chest, 1 in the right trunk/torso, 1 in the right forearm, 1 in the right hand, 2 in the left arm. And Vinnie, honestly, reading that, 1 in the right hand, that sounds like maybe a defensive measure there. And it must have been so scary for these two in that situation together in their house. Not only just them in the house, but with their young children in the house too. You can only imagine how this all went down inside their home that night going into that early morning of December 30th.
I will guarantee you those were the thoughts going through the minds of Monique and Spencer at that moment. Our children, our children, our children. All right, Cody, thanks so much. That brings us to the next question in our investigation. What do the autopsy results reveal here? What does it tell us about the scene? What does it tell us about the evidence? What does it tell us about the killer? Joining me, forensic death investigator, host of the extremely popular podcast Body Bags with Joseph Scott Morgan. Joseph Scott Morgan is with us, and private investigator Jason Jensen. Thank you both. All right, Joseph Scott Morgan, we'll begin with you. What are you taking away? What story does it tell, these results that have been released so far?
Well, we've got what we're talking about here are indeterminate ranges, which means that they cannot peg a distance down relative to these entrance wounds that we're talking about. Just with Spencer alone, Dr. Armstrong alludes to the fact in each one of these points along this list of gunshot wounds that he has sustained, there's no evidence of what she refers to as stippling or fouling, which means that there's no deposition from the end of that muzzle onto his skin. That would give us an indication that the shooter was probably at a greater distance than 18 inches away from him when he was fired upon. And that's significant. That means that you're not taking the muzzle of the weapon and pressing it directly against the skin and firing. He's at a distance. We don't know at this point if he had illuminated the area so that he could see them, maybe blinding them with a flashlight. But we do know that this is a case of both of these individuals sustaining multiple gunshot wounds over various surfaces of their body, to the point earlier with gunshot wounds to the hand. I think that, Spencer's in particular was noted to be on the dorsum of the hand. So he's responding like this, perhaps raising in response. One other very important piece to this, Vinnie, that I don't know has been mined out yet, is that Dr. Armstrong actually makes reference to the caliber in here. Now, she doesn't say the specific number. However, in Spencer's autopsy report, she refers to the caliber as a large caliber, all right? So that means that if you go with that bit alone, you're talking about a round that could be in the neighborhood of maybe a 45 caliber, 10 millimeter, this sort of thing, as opposed to, say, for instance, a 9 millimeter round that I have here. So it would be larger than this per her examination.
Let me ask you, Jason Jensen, as an investigator, what is the autopsy revealing to you?
I mean, just like Joseph Scott Morgan just identified, for starters, given the fact there's no stippling, that was something that was very key to lead them to realize it wasn't a contact or close contact shooting. So most likely an intruder, a third party. So there was no murder-suicide in that scenario. And given the fact that, we're talking so many injuries to the body, they're close enough that they're actually pretty accurate. They're hitting the torso, they're hitting the face, the head. So they're in the room with them rather than, some longer distance. So all of this says that they were close with each other, and like Joseph Scott Morgan just identified, given the fact that there is wounds to the extremities, that's usually not an area that you target. That usually happens when someone's either trying to protect their face or protect their torso, because it's just instinctive that you're just going to try and cover yourself when you're being harmed in such a manner.
16 shots. 16 shots, Joseph Scott Morgan. What is that? Is there significance to the number? Is that a large number for a double homicide? I hate to call it standard, but when people engage in this type of behavior where you're going to kill two people, would that be out of the ordinary?
Yeah, this is what I'd refer to as a mag dump, I think. This weapon, and a lot of this is going to be dependent upon the weapon platform that we're talking about, because still to this date, we don't know what weapon manufacturer it was. Was it Glock? Was it SIG? Was it HK? Was it Beretta? We don't know at this moment in time. And each particular platform can either use single stack or double stack internal magazines. And so that's hard to kind of understand. Here's one identifier, though, with this weapon and what they would have found if they recovered a weapon, I know. The weapon that was used was externally fitted with a threaded barrel so that it could receive a suppressor. That makes it very unique, Vinnie. This is not like something you can vet out all of the other platforms that are out there relative to this, because this thing is manufactured to take on a suppressor. At least that's what we're hearing at this point in time.
Let me ask you, Jason, are you surprised that we haven't heard more about people hearing shots in the night? If it's 16 shots, we've seen the neighborhood. The homes are relatively close to one another. We're not in a rural place. We had another case that we're covering involving the Canaro brothers, where a neighbor 2 miles away reported hearing a gunshot outside. What are your thoughts there?
Well, yeah, I mean, definitely you would expect to hear gunfire. The difference is, for starters, it's the winter, so you're going to have closed windows and stuff, so that suppresses some of the sound from traveling. The other fact is, when you're asleep, you don't necessarily notice some distant sounding or low, soft sounding sounds. But if he's using a suppressor, it's intended to be silent. He wanted to go in stealthy and escape and not be detected. And that's why you really, given the number of shots, this is going to be a self-defense story. If he's using a suppressor, it shows it was all premeditated.
Joseph Scott Morgan, the other thing about two people, it seems all these shots are hitting. There must have been no time for either one to react.
No, I don't think that there would be. And again, knocking down the sound is going to perhaps it's going to impede their ability to hear. Here's another interesting perspective. When you think about Spencer's, the majority of Spencer's shots, his entrance wounds were on the left side. Monique were on the right side, Ben. So unless he crawled into the bed and moved across that way, he would have had to have gone around the bed, shooting one person first or the other person. My home, I sleep on the left side of the bed. My wife sleeps on the right side. You'd have to migrate all the way around our bed in order to facilitate this. So that, again, gives you an idea. And we don't know actually the absolute position of bodies, okay? So I think that that's going to be important here when we see the scene reveal, I think. But it would seem as though that you've got an individual that approaches Spencer from the left side, and then he targets from the right side on Monique, and that's a significant piece of information. It also indicates he's familiar with this room, and on some level he can navigate in this environment, and that to me is one of the most terrifying aspects of this case.
Joseph Scott Morgan, Jason Jensen staying with us. Coming up next, was Michael McKee allegedly trying to kill the Tepes on December 6th?
How does this happen? This is such a rare thing, and two people that, you know, not a single person could say a bad word about them.
This week,
covering the country's biggest trials before we bring you inside the courtroom. Plus, the most compelling true crime cases in our daily spotlight.
opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Ezra McCandless was gender confused. She is standing trial for stabbing one of her lovers to death.
Was this murder?
The Killer Girlfriend Murder Trial. Weekdays on Court TV Legendary Trials.
We're still in shock that just going through all of the, you know, all of the types of grief all at once.
This has been brutal for the family, and now that family is taking care of those two little children. I know they'll be surrounded by love, but mom and dad aren't there anymore, and that's difficult. That's beyond difficult. Let me bring back in Court TV field reporter Cody Thomas. Let's talk about the suspect here, the ex-husband. Now, this was not Michael McKee's first time in the neighborhood the day of this double murder, according to investigators. What do we know about the history there?
Well, that's absolutely right, Vinny. This was not his first time there. In fact, he was there just over 3 weeks before those alleged murders took place on December 6th. Now, Vinny, according to an affidavit by police, a probable cause affidavit, detectives recovered video of Michael McKee on the property on December 6th and leaving a few hours later. So there's some video that exists that police have in their possession. Now, just want to reiterate, he was not inside the home, but he was on the Tepe's property. Now, the two dates here, Vinny, the killings happened on December 30th. He's on the property on December 6th. Investigators say in that same affidavit that these dates are consistent with video recovered of a silver SUV in the area that they traced back to Michael McKee, and these dates are consistent with dates that he was not scheduled to be at work at St. Anthony's Hospital back in Illinois. Now, another thing the affidavit pointed out, Vinny, is that it goes on to say that Monique and Spencer were away at the Big Ten football championship in Indiana on December 6th with several other couples. And it says Monique went back to her hotel room early during the second half, and when Spencer was asked by the other couples that were there with them what was wrong with Monique, he told the other couples that she was upset with something involving her ex-husband. Don't know exactly what that would have been, Vinny, but she was clearly upset. But Vinny, let's take a look at some video of the house. Remember, I was up there. I went in this alleyway here. This is the alleyway that person of interest video was captured on that police put out before Michael McKee was taken into custody. This is behind the Tepe's house. You see a fence there going into their backyard. That building there on the left, that's their own garage that's attached to the alleyway. And Vinny, when I was there, you see a camera here. There were cameras everywhere, across the street, on the neighbors' houses, cameras on the Tepe's house. So to me, Vinny, from what I gathered from being there, you know, I don't know many other places he could have been on the 6th on their property besides somewhere around the garage or in that backyard, because there's really no front yard. It's just steps down to the sidewalk in their townhome. So just very interesting that he was there, you know, better part of a month before these murders took place.
Yeah, very curious. Cody Thomas, great job. Thank you so much. That brings us to the final question in our investigation this hour. Was Michael McKee allegedly trying to kill the Tepes on December 6th? My guests are still with me. You've got Joseph Scott Morgan, Jason Jensen. Jason Jensen, I'll begin with you. Why do you think he's there on the 6th? Do you think this is his first attempt and it just turns out that they're not home? Or was something else going on here?
I would think that would be a reasonable inference in light of the situation. He lives in Illinois, and the Tepes live in Ohio. So unless it's well known in advance why he has any purpose there, you know, and being a short marriage and been now married to somebody else for 4 years, you wouldn't think there'd be any reason to be there.
Joseph Scott Morgan, let me ask you, he's there on the 6th. The murders are on the 30th. Again, allegedly, he's there on the 6th and the 30th. The first trip there, what do you think the purpose of that trip is? And I still don't understand how he got into the house. There was no forced entry in this case.
Yeah, that's a big mystery here. But I think there's a high probability this was a chance to surveil the property. And let me tell you why I think. We all know, for those of us that watch football, I was in front of the TV for that particular game, Big Ten championship, I think. He would have known this. I'm wondering, has he been following them to the point, is he on the periphery of their friend group? Is he connected to anybody in their lives back at Ohio State that would have known that they would have been in Indianapolis? So that puts them out of pocket for that moment in time. And did he go there to specifically surveil the area? You know, maybe thinking about this. And I'm not an attorney, Ben, but I don't know. This could be a big factor in kind of a premeditative event.
Oh, absolutely. I would use it. I would absolutely use it at trial. Jason Jensen, is there anything that comes to mind, any reason by going there without the Tepes there that somehow that trip could help him attempt to pull off a double murder or attempt to get into that house without being detected?
Well, I mean, clearly the advantage would be, given the fact that later on the 30th, he's in there in the middle of the night and somehow has this understanding of the layout to navigate to the bedroom and know where they're laying and whatnot. It would seem to be that getting into the home and getting a lay of the land was essential and may be the real reason why he was there on the 6th.
I wonder if investigators have figured out how he got in there. We may have to wait till the trial.
Oh, I think I know.
Go ahead. We have like 10 seconds.
I know. Okay, great. Typically, nowadays, people use the key code door locks. And if there was a code that she used, he was familiar with, he may have just attempted it.
Gotcha. All right, Joseph Scott Morgan, Jason Jensen, thank you both so much. The prosecution theory is painting quite a picture of this vascular surgeon. Imagine almost 10 years after a failed marriage to still be obsessed with your ex, to have so little going on in your own life that you choose to orphan 2 children and murder their parents simply because they were happy and you were an obsessed loser. That's the argument I would make to the jury. We'll see what prosecutors do when the time comes. I'm Vinnie Politan. We'll keep digging for the answers as the investigation continues.